welcome to Good Game Pocket Edition, your weekly wrap-up of all things gaming. I'm Bajo.
And I'm Hex. This week on the show, we sink our teeth into Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2.
I am the Prince of Darkness!
We'll find out if this vampire series gets our blood pumping, or if it's just losing its bite.
But first up, we have a look at some downloadable content, including Assassin's Creed Freedom Cry. This chapter is set 15 years after the events in Assassin's Creed 4. It focuses on the slave-turned-pirate-turned-assassin, Adewale, and his personal mission to exterminate every last Templar. The game's core of sneaking, stabbing, and epic naval battles remains the same, but now it's wrapped around a slavery theme.
Every day, more slaves arrive.
Adewale can free slaves in a handful of waves, and in return, the slaves unlock items and missions for him.
I appreciate that they changed up the combat a little bit this time. Adewale packs a lethal blunderbuss with a really wide range, so I tended to herd enemies together for group takedowns. Plus he's got a massive machete for some gruesome close encounters. He's like a swashbuckling Terminator.
He's got the personality to match too. I found him predictable and uninteresting compared to the more lively Kenway. Plus, why didn't this DLC focus on epic sea monsters? Or the giant squid that Ubisoft already made in the last game as an Easter egg? I just want to fight giant sea monsters. I gave this 6.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Well, I enjoyed returning to the pirate lifestyle a little more than you, obviously, so I gave it 8. We also returned to The Last of Us with Left Behind. This additional story gives us a lot more context behind Ellie's character. The DLC is broken into 2 halves, with some parts revealing a younger and more innocent Ellie playing with her childhood friend Riley. But the game also flashes forward to a more experienced Ellie on the hunt to find medicine for Joel, in scenes taking place near the end of the original game. You know, as depressing as this world can be, I'm so glad I got to come back to it.
Yeah, I was surprised at the slow pace of it, but I didn't mind that. There were still a couple of thrilling combat sequences, but a lot of the game is spent just hanging out with Riley.
Oh man!
Still, it's a testament to the writing chops of Naughty Dog that I was hooked completely from the start and invested in these characters.
Yeah, me too. Their friendship just felt so natural. You know, I already thought Ellie was terrific in The Last of Us, but this gave her character so much more scope. And I thought the ending was masterfully handled as well, so I gave it 9.5.
I gave it 9 out of 10. Over on Spawn Point this week, we enlisted in the world of tanks. This free-to-play World War II sim has been a big hit on PC for a few years, but now it's rolled out onto 360. World of Tanks boasts a hefty stable of vehicles, from the light and nimble scouts to the heavily armoured destroyers. The maps have also been thoughtfully constructed for tank-on-tank combat, with a mixture of hills to snipe from and buildings to provide useful cover.
I was impressed with how well this game made it feel like you're right in the thick of battle. Beefy sound design means you hear a satisfying crunch when the rounds connect with enemy tanks.
Hex, I can see why this game is so popular now, and it's because they've got that free-to-play model balance just right. I'm always a little wary of games with microtransactions, but I was able to progress through this at a good pace without forking out any money. I was tempted to pay cash for the fancier tanks, but I set my mind to unlocking them the hard way. And I'm so glad I did. I like this so much, I gave it 9 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we'll see more free-to-plays of this quality coming to console. I gave it 8. Next up, there's Trouble in Paradise with Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. Poor Donkey Kong's birthday party is snowed out by a fleet of nasty-looking Arctic foes. But what the plot lacks in originality is more than made up for by the endlessly creative platforming design. No 2 levels feel alike on this roller coaster of tropical challenges.
I didn't expect this to be so hard either. I'm impressed. Each bright and cheerful level is packed full of hazardous obstacles and tricky platforming sections that will have even long-time Donkey Kong Country fans going through more red balloons than ever before.
I like the way Donkey Kong can now tag in 3 of his family members to help out. I found myself using Diddy's jetpack and Dixie's spin the most, but I was surprised at how useful I found Cranky's pogo, especially to reach collectibles or just jump over enemies completely. This was top-notch platforming. It was a 9 from me.
I gave it 9 as well. Alright, Hex, off to the Ask Good Game desk.
Yes.
Alright, Hex, what's our question for the day?
Well, I thought we might tackle this one from Camipo in Penrith, New South Wales. Hey guys, is the resolution difference between the Xbox One and PS4 an issue with the hardware, or is it an issue with development and optimization for the specific console? I have an Xbox One and I'm worried I bought an expensive next-gen lemon. I don't want to go all resolution gate, but would you be able to share your insight? Had I have realized I was buying a weaker device, oh, this debate is killing me. Thank you for any advice you can give. Woo.
Ah yes, a resolution gate. It's been quite the storm in a teacup since the new consoles launched. For those not in the know, resolution gate just refers to the fact that a lot of Xbox One games are running at lower resolutions or frame rates than the PS4 version of the same game.
And the short and sweet of it is, well, yes, the PS4 has more powerful hardware and hence runs certain games better than the Xbox One.
We know that Ground Zeroes is 720 on Xbox and 1080 on PlayStation, and we've heard that The Witcher 3 and Watch Dogs are both running at lower resolutions on the Xbox One as well. But we have also heard that Microsoft are unlocking about 8% more GPU power that had previously been reserved for the Kinect. So we might see those resolution gaps shrink a little bit in the future, maybe.
Defeat your Emperor!
While it may be the weaker of the two, I wouldn't be so quick to call the Xbox One a lemon. Rise looks amazing, and games like Quantum Break look very pretty from what we've seen.
And as we've always said, when deciding which console to get, the most important thing is the games, especially the exclusive games and what your friends are playing. But if missing out on a bit of resolution really bothers you, then I'd say your choice is pretty clear.
But on that note, it's your review time. And seeing as we just talked about it, then let's see what you all thought of Rise.
Marius, son of Rome. Rise.
Mark Cool here said, the best graphics ever. 7.5 stars.
Doge here seemed equally impressed, writing, such graphics, much execution, wow, 7.5 stars.
Josh also seemed impressed by the execution, saying, great gladiator expositions. 8.5 stars.
But there was a fair few of you who seemed less than impressed, like Cool Guy, who wrote, lame, half a star.
Pokemon Master seemed to agree, saying, it's terrible, half a star.
And LolF5 jumped on the hater bandwagon, saying, epic fail, half a star.
You bring dishonor to me. You bring dishonor to Rome!
Well, another quite divisive game it seems, and on that note, we're back to the studio.
Back to the studio. The original Castlevania Lords of Shadow was an underrated and impressive reboot for the series. But does Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2 rise from the grave or rot in the mud?
It's modern day and you've been resurrected by your old enemy Zobek. He needs your help because Satan's acolytes are preparing for Satan to come back to Earth.
Story aside, there are a few changes to the first game. Gone is the combat cross, and in its place is the whip. It's essentially the same weapon though, with the same combos and the same direct and area of effect attacks. And there's a similar upgrade tree to work your way through.
The magic system has also been replaced. So now you have the Void Sword, which heals you with every successful attack, and Chaos Claws, which break enemy armor. Just didn't like the feel of them though. Neither has any range, really, and their use is limited by how much magic you have. So you just don't get to spend enough time using them to get your head around each one's unique combo set.
Yeah, I do like what they were going for though, that tug of war between using a weapon to regen your health and attacking. And when the combat comes together, it can be very satisfying timing those blocks, launching your foes into the air and ripping into them. But there are a few things holding the combat back. There's very little hit stun on enemies, and they're constantly throwing unblockable attacks, making it hard to get into a good flow. You basically have to resort to constantly dodging. It looks exciting, but it does take a little away from the juggle and combo fighting you should be focusing on. Another change is that you can also control the camera freely, which you couldn't do in the last game. It sounds great on paper, but it can work against you at times. A fixed camera can frame environments and fights to make everything feel more epic. And the God of War series is the master at this. Lords of Shadow 2 still does this at certain points, but there's also annoying instances where you're fighting the camera, especially in tight corridors.
Yeah, I think it was the right decision to go with manual camera control. I mean, they needed to free things up because this is a much more open and interconnected world. So it's essential to be able to look around and find new paths and secrets.
I think I actually preferred the more linear design of the previous game because it just had good pace to it. And with this one, the environments weren't really interesting enough to be constantly revisiting them.
Yeah, the modern day kind of setting blended with an ancient castle was a cool idea, I think, but it all ended up feeling a bit bland. There are still some nice areas in this, but a lot of it is pretty generic warehouse-type places and city streets.
It can be poorly laid out at times too. I spent quite a bit of time just wandering around, not really knowing where to go. For example, in one area I could see the map was saying I had to head over there, but it was highlighting a point for me to jump on that I just couldn't possibly make. Fair enough, I thought. Clearly, I just needed to unlock some sort of new power to reach it. So I followed the path nearby. Turns out I just had to stand on a very specific part of the level for it to show me where I actually had to jump. Frustrating.
Now, normally I'm a big fan of stealth sections, but I was not a fan of the stealth in this game. You regularly have your weapons disabled and have to figure out ways to get past guards by turning into a rat, or distracting them with swarms of bats, or possessing them. They're more like strict puzzles with one specific solution than actual stealth, with no room for creative thinking. Get it wrong and it's instant death.
Yeah, those felt pretty stilted and dated to me, and there were more of them than there should have been. The boss fights were definitely highlights, with some of those big bosses making a return.
Yeah, unfortunately for me, this game just didn't get the basics right, so what you're left with is this frustrating slog to pull off even the most simple mechanics. I actually gave this 4.5.
Well, I was expecting a lot from this game after truly loving the last one, and it is a bit of a step backwards, but I still think it's a decent enough hack and slash, so I gave it 6.5 out of 10 rubber chickens. Well, that's all the time we have for this week, but don't forget you can watch regular episodes of Good Game 8:30 p.m. Tuesday nights on ABC2.
Next week on the show, we'll see if a game can make us laugh till we vomit with South Park: The Stick of Truth.
There it is, the inn of the giggling donkey.
Also, Dark Souls 2.
Till next time, may all your games be good ones. Hex out.
Bajo out.